Hey coach, in this lesson we're going to look at something which I know you're going to have come across. So you could have been having DM discussion with somebody and then all of a sudden it just sort of stalls. You don't hear from them and you prompt a couple of times and you can see that they've read the message but they just haven't responded back again. So in this lesson I'm going to walk you through a tried and tested way of reviving those old discussions that you've had and then turning them into a warm potential lead again. So it's all about bringing that conversation back to life in a natural and authentic way without the person feeling that you're being pushy and it being awkward. And this first sequence is going to work whether you've qualified them already or not. It could be that they ghosted you before you'd even qualified them. It could be that you had qualified them as a potential lead and then you got ghosted at that point. So I'm going to show you some specific scripts and sequences that make it easy to re-engage without coming across as desperate. And the best part is that it's created in such a way, like the other sequences, that flows towards two actions, and that is to either get them into your Facebook group if they're a good fit, or hopping onto a strategy session with you. So that's the first DM sequence we're going to look at in this lesson. The second sequence is designed for those friends who've been sort of hanging around on your list, the ones that aren't clients yet, but you also notice that they're not in your Facebook group yet either. Now that could be that they didn't want to go into your Facebook group when you first engaged. It could be that you forgot to ask them. You know, things happen, but I can guarantee when you start looking at your Facebook group members and you start looking at your friends list and comparing, you'll find a shit ton of people who could potentially be in your Facebook group and probably should be. So this DM sequence is all about striking up a conversation again with somebody who's been on your friends list for a while and looking at trying to push them towards going into your Facebook group, or better still, perhaps jumping on a strategy call with you. So let's get started by looking at sequence number one, the ghosted chat. So we're going to revive the ghosted chat. And again, as with all these DM sequences, you absolutely must be a friend with them first. But as the whole purpose of this particular sequence is for friends on your list, clearly you're going to be friends with them. And you're going to jump straight in with just something that's a bit of a pattern interrupt, something that's a little bit odd. So, hey Emma, and then send a funny GIF. Some sort of GIF that is almost like, I've not caught up with you for a while, or don't leave me hanging, or there's a particular one, the Minions one that I like, where there's two Minions playing ping pong and one of them's fallen asleep and the ball's just bouncing off his head. Something that's in a light-hearted, tongue-in-cheek way of saying, I've not heard from you for a while, or you haven't responded to me for a while. So find an appropriate GIF. So the next thing you need to be thinking about is this person on my friends list a potential lead or not? Now, you may have already qualified them and determined that they are. But if you haven't, if it got ghosted before you'd qualified them, as soon as you've sent the GIF, you're going to jump straight in, straight away. You're not going to wait. You're going to jump straight in and say, just stopping by to see how things are with you. And you're going to get a closed reply or an open reply. A closed reply, you're just going to wish them a great day. And if you get an open reply saying, oh yeah, sorry, I've been really busy. You know, I noticed your message, but I just completely forgot about it. Have a bit of a chat with them and say, oh, great stuff. Just a quick one. Is content about niche and problem something you're interested in? You know, and obviously you're going to fill your niche and problem in there. And this is you qualifying whether or not they are somebody who you might want to invite into your Facebook group. They may come back and say no, in which case you say, no worries, wishing you a great day. If they come back and say yes, absolutely, then that's when you're going to say, oh, in that case, just in case you didn't know, I've got a Facebook group which covers exactly this sort of topic. Would you like the link to join? And you're going to go then down the route of getting them into your Facebook group. If it is somebody you have already qualified, so again, going back to the whole funny GIF that you've sent and then you're looking for some sort of response from them, if it's somebody you have already qualified and you already know that they'd be ideal to be in your group, but they're not yet, then again, you're going to still push them down the same sort of route. So when they come back, you're going to say, great stuff, you know, great to hear from you again. In case you didn't know, I've started a free Facebook group. And you're going to push them down that route. Assuming they want to go into your group, that's when you're going to pick up with part two. And part two here is pretty much the same as part two in any other of the DM sequences. It's all about waiting for them to come into the group, making sure they answer the questions. It's about looking whether or not they've answered yes to the strategy session. And it's about trying to explore the specific challenges that they have and driving towards offering them a strategy session. So parts 2 and 3 in this DM sequence are exactly the same as parts 2 and 3 in the other DM sequences. It's part 1. It's this part of the reviving the chat that's specific to this purpose. So that's the way in which you can try and revive a chat. And using a light-hearted GIF, a little animation, is always a good conversation starter. You know, people can't really be angry when you've sent them something funny, right? The next DM sequence we're going to look at is for those old friends who've been hanging around on your list for a while. You know, they have been qualified. You know that it would be worth them being in your group. And you're just sort of like perhaps going through your group. You're just perhaps going through your friends list and thinking, oh God, why aren't they in my group? Absolutely need to get them in there. I know they'd be ideal. And it happens. I've got loads of people that sit in my friends list, and every now and again I go through, perhaps every month or a couple of months, and think, oh God, yeah, I need to get them in there. Now, I don't just invite them in. I actually want to have a discussion with them before I get them in. So this is the sequence I would use to do that. And so again, they need to be a friend, and they're always going to be a friend. Look, because they're on your friends list. That's what this is for, an old friend that's not in your Facebook group that needs to be. Okay, so it assumes that there's no qualification needed. You know that they are qualified, they need to be. And then you're going to use this particular message. So, hey, Trevor, we've been friends for a while, and I thought I'd check in to see how things were going. Again, you're going to then wait for an open or a closed reply. Then you're going to chat as you normally would, provided it was an open reply. Maybe you're checking in on where things are with the business, checking in on them and the kids, where they went on holiday. You know, maybe go and have a look at their profile and see some of the recent posts so that you can relate what you say to some of the posts that they've done. Maybe you've realized they've just come back from Florida or whatever it is. You know, it's nice to add some relatability in there, right? And then after you've had a few messages backwards and forwards, that's when you're then going to drop in the, oh, by the way, I've got a Facebook group. Would you like the link? It's simple as that. If it's positive, that's then going to push towards part 2. And as I've said, part 2 is going to be very, very similar to part 2 in the other sequences. It's all about sending them the link, making sure that they have ticked to say they agree to the rules, checking out for whether they've answered yes or not to the strategy call question. And if they haven't, then you're going to go down the route of saying welcome to them and then asking if you can ask some questions, figuring out if they've got a strategy in place to overcome the problems, and pushing towards a strategy session. So as you can see, all we're doing is just sort of prodding and poking in a nice way with both of these sequences to try and get some life back in them again. Just because a previous conversation went down the route of being ghosted, it doesn't mean that we can't pick up on that conversation again further down the road, whether that's days, weeks, months, maybe even years. And especially with that second sequence, it's a really good practice, as I say, to look in your friends list for any people who you think would be ideal for being in your group. You've already qualified them, but look for the ones who aren't, and then use that second sequence to try and reignite a little bit of conversation and get them in. So both these sequences in this lesson are really good at trying to get some life back into old, ghosted, and dead chats. It's a way of reviving them and trying to utilize them to go down the route that we want them to go down.